It was supposed to be the perfect night. Fresh off their honeymoon flight, Maya and Jordan Westbrook stepped into the glowing entrance of Le Laurent, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. She wore ivory silk. He wore a charcoal blazer. Newlyweds, unmistakably in love, buzzing with that quiet kind of joy that lights up a whole room. The hostess barely looked up. Name? Westbrook. Reservation for 2. 7:30, Maya said, smiling. A pause. Click-clack of nails on a keyboard. Frown. Another pause. I'm not seeing it here. Maya kept her tone polite. I confirmed it yesterday. Twice, actually. You even sent us a text. The hostess didn't reply. She glanced to the side to the maitre d', who immediately stepped in, stone-faced. Perhaps you're mistaken, he said, already turning away. Jordan pulled out his phone. Showed the confirmation email. The exact time. The date. The name. Proof. Still, the maitre d' gave a tight smile, eyes never meeting theirs. I'm afraid we're fully booked. Then came the moment. A soft murmur from the maitre d' to the head chef, who had just stepped out of the kitchen. Chef Roland, tall white coat crisp, arms folded. He looked them over once, head to toe. Then he laughed, sharp and dry. This isn't the kind of place for confusion. Maya blinked. Excuse me, you'd be more comfortable somewhere. Casual. Less pressure. Know what I mean? The dining room went still. A fork clinked. Someone gasped softly. A woman near the bar turned to look. Maya opened her mouth, closed it, then said steady. We made a reservation. We confirmed it. We dressed for it. We flew across the country for it. And we showed up on time. Jordan's jaw tightened. Not a word. Just stared. Roland raised an eyebrow, then turned away. Try Midtown. They've got a decent Olive Garden. Phones were already out. A man near the window pressed record. A couple at the next table looked away, pretending not to hear. Maya's voice didn't rise. You don't know who we are. But you will. She turned, took Jordan's hand, and walked out. Slow, calm, every step echoing in that room full of silence. No yelling. No scene. Just quiet power. And the look on Roland's face. The moment they left, he had no idea what he'd just done. The moment they reached the door, Chef Roland's voice rang out behind them. Sharp, deliberate, too loud to be accidental. Hey, don't think you can show up, make a fuss and walk out like you're owed something. The room froze. Every diner stopped mid-bite. A candle flickered near the hostess stand. Maya turned, slow. Jordan did. Roland took a few steps forward, gesturing wide like a performer taking the stage. They came in demanding a table that doesn't exist. Argued with my staff. And now they want to leave like victims? He chuckled. That's not how we do things here. A few heads turned toward Maya. She stood still, one hand clutching her purse, the other pressed gently to her chest. Her eyes searched the room, not for help, but for clarity. To see who was really watching. She took a breath. We didn't argue. We asked a question. You insulted us. We decided to go. Roland scoffed. Oh, you decided? How generous. Jordan's shoulders tensed. He didn't move, didn't speak. His fist stayed at his sides, barely unclenched. The air around him seemed to hold its breath. A woman at table 6 quietly pulled out her phone, angling it toward the confrontation. She hit record. You're disrupting my dining room, Roland said, voice booming now. I don't care where you came from or how you got here. You weren't invited. So go. Maya blinked fast, lips parting slightly, eyes glistening. But she didn't cry, not yet. One young waiter looked over from the back wall, his face pale. The maitre d' shifted awkwardly. Somewhere near the bar, someone whispered, What's happening? We weren't disruptive, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're raising your voice. You humiliated us. And now you're trying to rewrite it. Oh, please, Roland barked, laughing again. The victim act's getting old. You didn't belong here the moment you walked in. Don't make this about something it's not. Maya's hand trembled. Just once. She glanced at Jordan, then back at Roland. Her voice dropped. You don't know who we are. Roland tilted his head. Don't care. Clearly, she said. But you will. A hush. Utter stillness. Even the clinking stopped. And then, for the first time, a tear slid down Maya's cheek. Not from pain, from restraint. Jordan turned, slow and silent. He opened the door, held it for her. As she stepped through, she looked back once, only once, eyes locked on Roland. "You'll regret this." The door shut behind them. No slamming, just a quiet click. Phones were still recording. Eyes were still watching. And inside that warm, candlelit room, humiliation didn't belong to Maya or Jordan. It belonged to everyone who stayed silent. The cold evening air met them like a wall as the restaurant door clicked shut behind them. Jordan inhaled once, deeply, then let it out slow. Maya didn't say a word. Their footsteps echoed across the near-empty parking lot, her heels ticking softly on the pavement, his shoes silent beside hers. They reached their car, a sleek black sedan, and for a moment, just a moment, they stood there in silence. Maya opened her clutch, pulled out her phone and tapped once. Jordan watched her without speaking. The tension in his shoulders hadn't eased. Not yet. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. Maya's voice was calm, crisp. "Activate the review audit. Start with Roland." There was a pause, then a quiet "yes ma'am" from the other end. She hung up without another word. Jordan leaned back against the car, arms folded. Didn't even finish the appetizer. Maya gave a soft, humorless laugh. They served enough. He looked at her carefully. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm not broken. I'm awake." He glanced at the restaurant. The golden glow still shining through the tall windows, faces still dimly visible through the glass. "This wasn't about dinner," he said. "No," she replied. "It was about the door." He looked at her, puzzled. "The door they slammed in our face," she said, her voice low. "Not just tonight, the one they've slammed for years. In different places. Different names. But it's always the same door." Jordan nodded slowly. Understanding. "This time," she said, "they slammed it too hard. And they forgot who they were dealing with." He exhaled. "You think they'll even realize what's coming?" She slipped her phone back into her clutch. Smoothed the fabric of her dress. "Not yet. But they will." They got into the car. Maya fastened her seatbelt, her expression unreadable. Behind them the restaurant buzzed on, unaware. But something had shifted. Because this wasn't just another story of insult and exit. It was a test. And Roland had just failed. Not because he turned them away, but because he thought they were powerless. He thought the way they looked meant they didn't belong. He thought they were asking for a favor, but they never needed his table. They owned the table, and now he was about to find out exactly what that meant. Not with fury, not with noise, but with precision, with dignity, with power. And by the time he realized it, it would be far too late. The video went up at 9. By 10:03, it had 6,000 views. By midnight, it crossed. By sunrise, 2.1 million. It was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit. People shared it not because it was rare, but because it was familiar. Because they'd seen versions of it before. Quiet cruelty dressed as policy. Disrespect in a tuxedo. In the video, Roland's voice was crystal clear. "I don't care where you came from, you weren't invited." Then Maya's final line, calm and sharp as a blade. "You'll regret this." Viewers didn't just watch. They felt it. The hashtag #DineWithDignity exploded. Comment after comment poured in. "This made me cry. Why does this still happen in Shout out to Maya for staying composed. That's real strength. Name the restaurant. We'll take it from here. And they did. Le Laurent's Yelp rating dropped from 4.8 to 2.2 in 6 hours. Google followed. Screenshots of racist reviews left by Chef Roland over the years started circulating. Old staff members commented anonymously, backing Maya's story. One post read, "I worked there for 6 months. If you weren't white or French, you were invisible." Food bloggers picked it up. Then local news. Then national. One viral tweet said, "Imagine turning away the CEO of the empire that funds half your industry. Couldn't be me." And still, Chef Roland didn't get it. He logged on to Instagram and posted a dimly lit photo of foie gras with the caption, "I don't serve troublemakers." 12,000 comments in an hour. Every major food publication unfollowed the restaurant. Some issued statements. One headline read, "Power couple turned away at Le Laurent sparks global conversation on racism and fine dining." Roland's arrogance had become gasoline. Every response he gave only added fuel. Back in her office, Maya scrolled silently. No posts from her. No tweets. Just watching. Jordan leaned over her shoulder. "He still thinks this is about one bad night." Maya smiled without warmth. "He thinks he's being attacked, But all we're doing is telling the truth. And the truth was doing the rest. Justice didn't need a megaphone. It just needed a moment. And that moment had come. By morning, Roland's name wasn't on the menu anymore. It was a warning. Chef Roland had always believed in order. Not just in the kitchen, in everything. He was raised on rigid traditions, crisp chef whites, and the mythology of the Michelin star. To him, cuisine was about hierarchy, control, purity of method. And people were just variables in the equation. He never questioned it. He memorized French phrases he could barely pronounce. Worshipped chefs who'd yelled and thrown pans, called it passion when they exploded in rage. He thought dignity was a garnish, pretty but unnecessary. He built Le Laurent as a fortress. No music in the kitchen, no slang, no laughter. Rules printed in laminate above the prep station. One slip and you were out. But that week, things began to shift. Orders came in slower. Reservations dropped. The usually buzzing kitchen felt quieter, tense. Eyes lingered longer. Conversations paused when he walked by. And then came Maria. She'd been there from day one. A sous chef with calloused hands and a memory sharper than Roland's knives. She had stayed because she believed she could outlast his temper. That the food mattered more than the ego. She stepped into his office after service. Apron still on. Arms crossed. "You've got 30 seconds, he muttered, not looking up. Maria didn't flinch. "What you did wasn't just wrong." Roland raised an eyebrow. "Here we go." It was stupid. That made him look up. "You embarrassed yourself," she said. "You embarrassed all of us." "I enforced policy." "No," she said. "You enforced your bias, and now we're paying the price." He stood, jaw clenched. "You think I care what strangers on the internet say?" She didn't blink. "I think you should care what your staff says. Because we see you. We've always seen you." There was a pause. Long. Heavy. He finally spoke low. "You can leave if you have a problem." "I'm not the one with a problem," she said. "You are. And it's catching up to you." She turned and walked out without waiting for a response. Roland sat back down. But the silence felt different now. It wasn't peace. It was pressure. The kind that cracks foundations. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel in control. By Tuesday morning, the mystery was over. The internet had done its homework. And it had named Maya and Jordan Westbrook. Not just honeymooners. Not just diners. Not just anyone. They were owners of Sovereign Kitchens. A quietly massive culinary group with over 70 restaurants worldwide. Michelin starred. James Beard recognized. Majority owned. And globally respected. They weren't influencers. They were the people influencers wanted to meet. A video surfaced of Maya speaking at a TED Talk. She stood on stage in a crimson blazer. Voice calm and confident. "We don't just want seats at the table. We build the table." The clip hit 3.5 million views overnight. Another video showed Jordan in a classroom, coaching young black chefs through knife technique. His voice was gentle, focused. "Precision is power," he said. "But humility is the real flavor." Someone reposted it with the caption, "This is who Roland disrespected." Unbelievable. The reaction was immediate. Food journalists scrambled to update their stories. Headlines changed, tone shifted. The couple wasn't just wronged. They were royalty. In kitchens around the country, line cooks whispered about it between orders. "You hear about the Westbrooks?" "Yeah, they run everything." "I thought they were just regular." "No one who moves that quiet is regular." Even Roland's former staff began sharing screenshots of congratulatory emails from Maya, notes from Jordan, stories of mentorship, scholarships, second chances. A pastry chef tweeted, "They funded my bakery. I had no idea they were involved. They changed my life." The love was deep, and it was earned. Not through flash, but through decades of quiet, consistent work. They'd never needed attention. But now that the spotlight found them, they stood in it with quiet grace. No angry tweets. No dramatic statements. Just truth. And presence. And the growing realization that Roland hadn't just kicked out a couple. He'd kicked out the architects of the very system he'd spent his life trying to impress. And now, the whole industry was watching. Roland barely slept. His phone buzzed constantly. Angry comments. Threats to boycott. Withdrawal notices from investors he'd known for years. He tried to respond. A shaky statement here. A vague apology there, but nothing stuck. No one believed him anymore. And worse, no one needed him. Laurent had gone from legend to liability. He typed out an email to Maya and Jordan, called the incident a misunderstanding, said he'd like to speak in person, extend a proper invitation, fix things. He never got a reply. 2 days later, an envelope arrived at the restaurant, hand-delivered, official seal on the flap. It wasn't a dinner acceptance. It was an inspection notice. Health department. Unscheduled. Immediate. Inside the kitchen, panic rippled through the staff. The walk-in fridge hadn't been deep cleaned in weeks. Inventory logs were outdated. Maria stood stiff by the sink, lips pressed tight. Roland paced. "This is targeted," he said. "They're coming for me." Maria didn't look up. "No, they're coming for the truth." He shot her a glare, but it didn't land. No one rallied to his side. No one defended him. He'd built his legacy on fear and silence. And now, that silence was turning into distance. At home, he scrolled through article after article. The fall of fine dining's old guard. When ego meets empire. The Westbrooks and the new face of culinary power. They didn't even say his name anymore. They didn't have to. His absence was the headline. He stared at his screen, trying to understand how it had all slipped so fast. One moment of arrogance. One assumption. And the empire he thought he ruled? It never belonged to him. He'd just been borrowing it. Now the real owners had come to collect. The texts weren't meant to be seen. They were the kind of backroom messages you send when you think no one will ever hold you accountable. Half jokes. Half orders. All ugly. Maria stared at them for hours. The screenshots were saved months ago, not because she planned to use them but because something told her she might need to. Now she knew. One message from Roland said, "He's too slow and too loud. Let him go. Doesn't really fit the look anyway." It referred to Marcus, a young black server who was fired after being late once. He had texted that day to say his train stalled, but it didn't matter. He was out. Another message, weeks later, showed Roland excusing a white waiter's third late arrival with, "He's trying. He's got potential." Potential, Maria thought bitterly. That word always had conditions. She sent the files to an anonymous email. Attached a short note, "You want proof? Here it is." Signed, "Someone who's had enough." The email landed in the inbox of Lena Torres, a rising food justice blogger with a reputation for exposing discrimination in fine dining. Within 3 hours, Lena had verified the metadata, cross-checked the timeline. She posted her The title read, "Chef Roland's Recipe for Bias." The leaked messages that say it all. The screenshots were brutal, clear, unforgiving. Thousands shared it within the first hour. Then tens of thousands. Chefs reposted it. Food writers. Even celebrities. One tweet read, "Imagine how much worse it was off camera." A former barback commented, "This isn't new, just new to you." Maria didn't reveal herself. Not yet. She just watched. And as the internet read every word, every timestamp, every decision that revealed a clear pattern, something shifted. It wasn't about opinion anymore. It was about evidence. Truth. Undeniable. And for Roland, denial was no longer on the menu. They sat side by side, calm under the studio lights. Maya in a navy suit. Jordan in tailored gray. No anger on their faces. No bitterness in their voices. Just clarity. The interviewer leaned in, clearly trying to balance curiosity with disbelief. "So, you didn't come forward yourselves?" Maya smiled softly. "No, we didn't need to." The video spoke. The truth found its own voice. Jordan nodded. It was never about revenge. Then what was it about? The host asked. Maya answered without hesitation. Dignity. And memory. Because people forget things like this happen until they're forced to see it. The interviewer held up a tablet, showing a freeze frame of Roland's now viral quote. "You weren't invited. Do you think this moment says something bigger about the industry?" Jordan leaned forward, steady. "This moment isn't an outlier. It's a mirror," Maya continued. "We've sat at tables where we weren't heard, walked through doors we had to build ourselves. This wasn't the first time. It just happened to be the one that got caught." The studio went quiet for a beat. The kind of quiet that holds weight. "And what now?" the host asked, voice quieter. Jordan didn't blink. "Systemic change." Maya added, "Not just apologies. Not just PR. Actual frameworks. Actual training. Equity, not performative inclusion." The host turned back to the camera. You've launched an initiative, right? Maya nodded. The Dignity Table. It's a network for accountability. Real policy reform. Partnering with restaurants willing to examine themselves, not defend themselves. The interview ended with a round of applause from the small studio crew. Spontaneous, unscripted. Online, the reaction was overwhelming. Clips from the segment were shared with captions like, "The calm power in their voices is louder than any shout. They didn't just speak, they led. I want to eat at any place they believe in." By evening, the Dignity Table had over 50 restaurant signups. Dozens of chefs volunteered to participate in listening forums. And Roland, he didn't say a word, because when Maya and Jordan spoke, the world finally started listening. The email came in first. Unsigned, untraceable. "I was a dishwasher. He never let me take breaks. Said we didn't get tired because we didn't do real work. My back still hurts." Then another. "I prepped desserts. Chef mocked my accent every time I pronounced ganache. Said, 'Maybe stick to home cooking, sweetheart.' I cried in the walk-in." And another. "I watched him fire a cook for burning bread. Not white bread, brown bread." Within 48 hours, over 20 former employees had come forward. Some gave names, others stayed anonymous. All told the same story. Cruelty, discrimination, arrogance wrapped in gourmet plating. Lena, the food blogger, organized the testimonies into one living document. She titled it The Roland Report. Each entry had a date, a role, and a first-hand account. It wasn't just opinion anymore. It was data. Patterns. Consistency. The document circulated fast. Journalists, chefs, culinary schools. One excerpt read, "I was never late, never missed a shift. He still called me diversity hire to my face." Another, "We were told to seat black couples near the kitchen or the bathroom, not too close to the windows." The signatures piled on. Chefs, activists, former staff, students. Over 18,000 people signed the petition calling for a formal review of Roland's business licenses. A lawyer from the Food Workers Equity Council publicly offered pro bono legal help. Maya and Jordan didn't comment. They didn't need to. The community had taken the reins. For once, truth didn't need amplification. It had already found its megaphone, through the very people Roland dismissed, diminished and discarded. And now, they weren't just voices. They were a movement. By the time the lunch rush would have started, the street outside Le Laurent was already full. Not with customers, not with food trucks, with people. Hundreds of them. Holding spoons. Silver ones. Plastic ones. Wooden. Engraved, even bent. Some held theirs up high like torches. Others tapped them gently against their palms. A soft rhythmic clinking that echoed down the block like a heartbeat. On cardboard signs. Handwritten messages. "We're done being quiet. You can't unseason the truth." Silence breaks when spoons rise. The protest wasn't angry. It was focused. Intentionally peaceful. But the energy, sharp as a knife's edge. Local news crews parked across the street. One reporter whispered into her mic, in a growing movement being called the Spoons Up protest. Crowds are gathering outside Le Laurent, the now notorious restaurant at the center of a discrimination scandal that's gone viral worldwide. At the center of the crowd stood a small girl, maybe 8 years old, holding a hand-painted spoon above her head. The words, "For my mom who never got promoted," were written in purple glitter. Her mother stood beside her, eyes wet but proud. Diners who had made reservations days ago pulled up in cars, looked at the crowd, and drove away. By 1 a.m., 5 major sponsors had announced they were suspending partnerships with Le Laurent. One statement read, "We cannot align with institutions that disregard basic human dignity." Still inside, the kitchen staff stood still. No plates went out, no tickets printed, just silence, except for the soft chant drifting in from outside. Clink, clink. Roland walked past the window and pulled the curtain tight. A staff member spoke up. "Careful. They're not going anywhere." Roland didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed his coat, straightened it, and stepped outside. Heads turned. Cameras swung toward him. The spoon clinking stopped for one still second, then resumed, louder this time. Steady. He walked stiffly, shoulders rigid, past the line of protesters. He didn't look left or right, but the message surrounded him. One man shouted calmly, "Chef, do you see us now?" Roland didn't reply, didn't flinch, but his jaw clenched hard enough to shake. Someone called out, "Where's your apology?" Still nothing. He kept walking. Past the spoons, the signs, the silence. Past everything he'd tried so hard to ignore. Because that's what denial looks like when it meets its reflection. Empty pride in the face of full truth. And behind him, as he disappeared into the alley entrance, the clinking didn't stop. If anything, it got louder. The announcement came quietly. No warning. No ceremony. 1 minute, Chef Roland's face still graced the streaming platform's homepage, smirking over a seared duck breast. The next, gone. His show, Taste of Legacy, vanished from syndication. No reruns. No final episode. Just a silent. The network's official statement was only 2 lines. "We stand against discrimination in all forms. Our partnerships reflect our values." That was it. But it echoed loud. Within hours, Roland's inbox overflowed. First, his cookware sponsor dropped him. Then the kitchenware brand he'd endorsed for years. His publisher canceled the next cookbook mid-print. He tried to fight back, posted a long, breathless rant on his personal blog titled "The Death of Art." He blamed the mob, the media, the modern generation. He never once said Maya's name. Never once said Jordan's. Never once said sorry. Instead, he called it cancel culture. A disease, he wrote, that punishes tradition and rewards outrage. He claimed he was being erased for speaking his truth. But the public had already seen the footage, read the leaked messages, heard the testimonies. They weren't outraged because he made a mistake. They were outraged because he never believed he had. Comments flooded in. Accountability isn't cancellation. You didn't get erased. You got revealed. You built your brand on exclusion, and now it's collapsing under its own weight. Some fellow chefs tried to defend him, quietly behind closed doors. But no one said anything out loud. Not after the sponsors walked. Not after the Westbrooks kept silent and powerful. Roland's once bustling restaurant now sat half-empty most nights. The reservation list, once 3 months out, had gaps. Waitstaff rotated constantly. His core team, the ones who stayed through the early years, had all resigned. The empire he'd spent decades building was crumbling, and no one was rushing in to save it. Not because people hated him, but because people were done pretending not to see him. And this time, Roland's name wasn't followed by stars or praise. It was followed by silence. The kind you can't cook your way out of. The room wasn't fancy. No spotlight. No cameras. No stage. Just a circle of chairs. A shared table with lukewarm coffee. And quiet voices. The kind that held weight even without volume. Maya and Jordan sat near the center. Not in charge. Not seeking attention. Just present. The community roundtable had been organized in less than a week. A gathering of chefs, hospitality workers, educators, and activists. All of them tired. All of them hopeful. One by one, people spoke. A server talked about being told to hide her braids. A line cook admitted he learned to walk quieter, just to avoid being too much. A restaurant owner confessed that he'd stayed silent too long, afraid to upset the status quo. Maya and Jordan listened. Really listened. They didn't interrupt. They didn't dominate. And when they did finally speak, it wasn't a speech. It was a blueprint. Maya leaned forward, her voice low and measured. "We can't wait for justice to go viral. We need systems, consistency, culture change." Jordan nodded. "We're proposing a framework. Something tangible. It's called the Dignity Table Initiative." A few heads tilted. Pens came out. Jordan continued. "It includes bias training for all levels of staff, anonymous reporting channels, transparent hiring metrics. It's not just policy, it's culture building." Maya added, "We'll pilot it through sovereign kitchens. And we're funding it ourselves, not for profit. For change." Silence followed. Not hesitation, absorption. Then one clap. Then another. Then the whole room rose. Applause, swelling, not wild, but full. Steady. Meaningful. Someone whispered. "Finally." Another said. "This could change everything." And for a brief moment, Jordan looked over at Maya, and she gave the smallest nod. Not pride. Not readiness. Because this wasn't about revenge, or fame, or even Roland. This was about rebuilding the table from the ground up. So no one else would ever have to ask if they belonged. They just would. The envelope was plain. No return address. Slightly bent at the corners. It came in a stack of mail, somewhere between a menu sample and a non-profit newsletter. Jordan almost threw it away. But Maya noticed the handwriting. Neat, careful, a little shaky. She opened it at the kitchen table, with the afternoon light spilling across the wood. Inside was a single sheet. Lined paper. Ink slightly smudged. Dear Maya, I don't know if this will reach you, but I hope it does. I saw the video. I saw how you stood there, not yelling, not pleading, just standing in truth. And I wept, because I've stood in that same truth. 20 years ago, I worked under Roland. I was a young black chef, fresh out of culinary school, full of ideas, eager to prove myself. He fired me after 3 weeks. Said I was too bold, said I didn't fit the brand. Said I should learn to cook my own kind of food. I spent the next decade doubting myself. Every kitchen I entered, I carried that rejection like a stain. I thought no one would ever believe me. Until you. Thank you for being louder than silence. Thank you for standing when the rest of us were too tired to try again. You didn't just speak for yourself. You spoke for all of us who were erased behind the line. With deep respect, Elijah S. Maya held the letter for a long time. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her breath didn't hitch. But slowly, tears began to fall. Quiet. Steady. The kind of tears that don't scream, they testify. Jordan walked in. Paused at the doorway. What's that? She handed it to him. Said nothing. Just let him read. When he finished, he set it down gently and placed a hand on her back. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Because that letter wasn't just from the past. It was a bridge. From silence to sound. From erasure to record. From surviving to being seen. The email came at 6. Subject line. Request for dialogue. Signed, Roland Devereaux. Maya stared at it for a moment. Then showed it to Jordan. He read it once, then twice. You want to meet him? She nodded once. I want to hear what he thinks redemption looks like. They picked a neutral space, a quiet private room at a non-profit workspace they'd once funded. No cameras, no press, just them. Roland arrived 12 minutes late. No apology. He wore a dark suit too formal for the room, as if hoping to shift the energy by overdressing. He sat, fidgeted, cleared his throat. I'm not here to defend what happened, he began, already defensive. But I do think this got blown out of proportion. Maya said nothing. Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly. Roland pressed on. I built something real. My name meant something. And now I'm treated like a villain because of one misstep. Silence. He shifted in his chair. I've lost sponsors, TV, investors. My staff's leaving. I get death threats. Still, no reply. His voice cracked a little. What do you want from me? That's when Maya finally spoke. We don't want anything from you. He blinked. Then why? You don't need our forgiveness, she said calmly. You need accountability. He looked stunned. What does that even mean? It means sitting with what you did, Jordan said. All of it. Not explaining it away. Not framing yourself as the victim. Roland looked down at the table. Hands folded. For a split second he seemed smaller. Maya stood. Jordan followed. We don't hate you, she said. But we also don't carry your healing. That's yours to do. And with that, they walked out, leaving him alone. Not ruined, but revealed. The post went up at 9 a.m. sharp. A simple image. A clean white document cover with the words Sovereign Kitchens, Independent Equity Audit, 2020. No dramatic caption. Just Maya's calm voice in a single sentence. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Within 15 minutes the site crashed from traffic. The audit was 64 pages long, backed by data. Stories, patterns, charts, testimonies, receipts. It named names. Over a dozen high-profile establishments, including LaLauren, were flagged for repeated discriminatory practices, hiring gaps, pay disparities, promotion barriers, toxic culture. It didn't just call them out. It laid out exactly what needed to change. Anonymous reporting platforms, quarterly diversity checks, leadership-level anti-bias training, transparent wage reviews, public accountability boards. Restaurants that refused to cooperate were noted. Those that had already begun reforming were praised. But no one was spared scrutiny. Not even Sovereign Kitchens itself. Maya had insisted on it. If we're going to set the standard, she'd said, we're going to stand inside it too. The transparency hit hard. People reposted their favorite excerpts. You can't cook justice into a dish you refuse to serve. Bias doesn't need intention to do damage. A journalist tweeted, This isn't a takedown, it's a roadmap. By afternoon, over 4 million people had shared the link. Laurent's page was flooded with comments demanding reform or closure. Other restaurants, feeling the heat, began voluntarily implementing the audit's recommendations. One fine dining group pledged to complete its own audit within 9. Food critics stopped rating for flavor alone. They started asking, who gets to stand in the kitchen? Change wasn't just happening. It was multiplying. And at the center of it all, not loud, not performative, stood Maya, not fighting for the spotlight, but building one big enough for everyone else. The announcement didn't come from a press release. It came from a single post on a chef's personal Instagram. A photo of two hands, one dark, one light, clasped over a cutting board. Below it, the caption, "We're in. Dignity table. Full commitment. No exceptions." The account belonged to Chef Anya Laurent, owner of Maison Lune, a 2-star Michelin restaurant in Chicago known for its precision and poise. Her voice carried weight, and she just tipped the first domino. Within hours, food writers reposted it, industry leaders praised it. Guests flooded her reservation system, not just because the food was exquisite, but because the ethics were finally matching the elegance. When asked why she joined, Anya's response was simple. What's the point of creating beautiful meals in a broken system? If your kitchen only feeds power, you're not cooking, you're covering up. 2 days later, a restaurant in Seattle followed. Then a bistro in New Orleans. Then a global chain in London. Then 2 more, one in Brooklyn, one in Atlanta. Each one signed on to the Dignity Table initiative in full. Not just on paper but in practice. Transparent wages, diverse hiring boards, anonymous feedback loops, full participation in quarterly accountability forums. It wasn't performative. It was personal. And then came the next surprise. An announcement from a man no one expected to hear from again. Elliot Crane, Roland's former head sommelier, the one who'd worked in silence for over a decade, curating wines with excellence, keeping his head down, enduring Roland's icy microaggressions, enduring years of being called eloquent like it was a miracle. Elliot had vanished quietly after the scandal broke. Now he returned, this time with his own bar. He called it Uncorked Truth, a small inclusive wine bar in the heart of the city. Every bottle on the menu came from vineyards led by women, people of color, LGBTQ winemakers, and historically excluded growers. He posted a video tour of the bar with a soft-spoken voiceover. For years I poured wine while hiding parts of who I was. Not anymore. Here we don't just open bottles, we open space. The video went viral. 3 million views in 2 days. Lines around the block. Interviews, profiles, support. One commenter wrote, "You didn't leave the industry, you elevated it." And as the dominoes kept falling, more restaurants joining, more chefs coming forward, more menus reshaped with conscience. The message grew louder. Change wasn't just possible. It had started. And it wasn't being led by those clinging to legacy. It was being led by those who knew how to build new tables. Together. No red carpet. No velvet ropes. No flashy signage. Just a long table, handmade from reclaimed wood, stretching across the heart of a glass-roofed garden space. The invitation was simple. One night. One table. Countless voices. Signed, Maya and Jordan Westbrook. Guests arrived quietly. Chefs from around the world. Activists. Writers. Community leaders. Every plate at the table told a story. And none of them were stories Roland would have ever served. A Kenyan chef plated sweet plantain and spiced beans, his grandmother's recipe, a dish that got him laughed out of culinary school years ago. A Korean-American baker presented a dessert inspired by her mother's rice cakes, paired with roasted sesame and bittersweet cacao. A Palestinian chef offered sumac roasted lamb with preserved lemon, a taste, she said softly, of home and resistance. Each course was introduced not with flourish but with purpose. A few words, a name, a journey. Cameras were allowed, but the coverage stayed in the background, respectful, observing, not directing. At the center of the table, Maya stood once. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give a speech. She simply said, "This table exists because so many before us weren't allowed to sit. Tonight we honor them by taking our place, and by making more space." Applause rose like a tide, not wild, steady. Jordan added, "This is more than a meal. This is memory. This is revolution on a plate." Guests nodded. Some wept. A famous food critic, rarely sentimental, whispered to a colleague, "This is more than food. This is the future." And she wasn't wrong. The banquet wasn't about pity. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Roland anymore. It was about reclamation, of flavor, of space, of worth. Each dish was a defiance. Each toast was a vow. By the end of the night, chefs were exchanging numbers, sharing ideas, already planning collaborative kitchens and mentorship programs. A sous chef from Mexico City offered to host the next banquet. A vegan soul food chef from Detroit pledged to start a Dignity Table satellite chapter in her city. The revolution wasn't just being televised. It was being cooked. And under the soft light of the garden roof, with empty plates and full hearts, everyone at the table knew this wasn't a one-time event. It was a movement dressed in linen, a protest made of flavor, a reckoning, and a rebirth served one course at a time. It started with a letter, signed by the presidents of 3 major culinary institutes. "We have heard the call, and we're answering it." That letter went viral within hours. For the first time, top culinary schools were publicly acknowledging systemic bias within their own halls. A space long protected by prestige and silence was cracking open. Willingly, they didn't just issue statements, they laid out changes, mandatory bias and cultural humility training. Not as electives, but as core curriculum. Diverse hiring panels for all faculty positions. Anonymous student reporting systems tied to real consequences. Tuition grants for underrepresented students. Cross-cultural culinary history courses led by chefs who had lived the story, not just studied it. And at the center of it all, guiding the reforms with clear vision and calm resolve, Sovereign Kitchens. Maya and Jordan didn't just lend their name. They designed the structure, vetted the speakers, and offered paid mentorship positions through their own restaurant network. They handpicked leaders from every corner of the industry, sous chefs, farmers, sommeliers, food writers, people who had been shut out for too long. And then came the biggest shift. The formation of the National Culinary Equity Council, funded by a coalition of foundations, supported by both private and public grants. The council was tasked with one thing: institutional reform. Not suggestions. Not social campaigns. Policy. The council's mission: track data on diversity in kitchens nationwide, enforce transparent hiring and promotion practices, certify restaurants and schools that meet inclusive standards, provide restorative justice pathways for workers harmed by discriminatory environments. And yes, Maya and Jordan were named as co-chairs. But they didn't take the spotlight. They shared it. Every press appearance featured someone new, a chef who'd come forward, a student now thriving, the leader once overlooked. A culinary world once defined by competition and gatekeeping was slowly shifting into something else: collaboration, accountability, possibility. Of course, not everyone welcomed it. Some called it overreach. Some accused them of lowering the bar. But those voices grew quieter, not because they were silenced, but because they were finally outnumbered. By voices that had waited too long. By talent that had been invisible for too long. And the numbers began to show it. Within a year, culinary school applications from students of color rose. Restaurant turnover dropped in establishments that adopted Dignity Table standards. Customer loyalty increased. So did trust. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, the industry wasn't just feeding people. It was feeding change. The footage is quiet at first. Just a soft hum of knives on cutting boards. The sizzle of oil in pans. A chef's sleeve brushing flour off a counter. Laughter. A line cook singing under her breath while prepping greens. Then Maya's voice, steady and warm, overlays it all. "We don't need revenge," she said. "We don't need shame. We don't even need apologies that come too late." A shot of a young chef, maybe 19, checking a simmering sauce with care. He wears a Sovereign Kitchens apron. Behind him a mentor gently nods, offering no correction, just presence. What we need are tables where everyone belongs. Clips roll. A woman in a hijab plating high-end pastries. A Latinx farm owner speaking to culinary students about sustainable sourcing. The kitchen team sitting together, eating with their head chef, not beneath him. Maya continued, "We need spaces where ideas are welcome, not stolen. Where accents are honored, not mocked. Where food is an invitation, not a gate." The screen shifts to classrooms filled with young culinary students. A chalkboard reads, History of diaspora flavors. A hand goes up. A teacher nods. Then a series of flashes. A certificate being handed to a young chef who'd once been told she'd never make it past prep. A smiling group at Uncorked Truth clinking glasses, celebrating a year in business. A restaurant kitchen in Detroit, built by a Dignity Table alum. Hiring returning citizens. Maya's voice softens. This isn't just a story about what happened to us. It's about what we built with it. We didn't just fight back, we reached forward. The music swells gently. Nothing dramatic. Just a low, hopeful melody. And then, a final image. A slow pan across a familiar storefront. The once famous gold lettering now chipped. The windows are dark. Dust inside. A small white sign taped to the door reads, "For lease." This was Le Laurent, the restaurant that shut its doors before it could open its eyes. No crowd outside. No protest. Just stillness. And Maya's final words echo. Injustice tried to close the door. So we built a new one. Fade to black. Then, quietly, the sound of a spoon clinking gently on a plate. Just once. Full circle.